What is a sport? A sport is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. Of course, when you think of a sport, football, baseball, basketball, etc. come to mind. But what about cheerleading? Is cheerleading a sport? If we go off the definition of a sport, then yes, it is a sport, but others always try to argue that. As a cheerleader myself, I'm here to tell you why I believe cheerleading is a sport. Let's start off with physical exertion. When you think of an athlete, you picture someone who is toned with abs and muscles, and the reason why we think that is because this is what shows us the time and effort they put into their sport. Cheerleaders also have this athletic stereotype bodies. How do these athletes gain muscle without participating in something that requires a great amount of physical exertion? Cheerleaders are required to lift girls their weight or girls heavier than them, and are required to flip, spin, and land them back onto their feet. None of this is effortless, and the training that is required to do even the simplest skills can take days and hours of practice in the gym. Next comes training. Cheerleading is a sport with endless opportunities to grow and prove you are better than the rest. With this comes extreme amount of training. Some gyms train more than others. Most cheerleaders are required to go to practices, 3 to 4 team practices a week that go on for hours. This does not include private lessons that are aside from the classes. You will never see a cheerleader sitting in front of her TV just watching it. Instead, you will see them sitting on the ground stretching while watching TV, which shows their dedication in improving their skills. Many people ask, what skills make a cheerleader such a difficult sport? The first main part of cheerleading is tumbling. Some tumbling skills can be very simple and can be done by people who have little to no background experience in cheerleading or gymnastics. But once you add in twist and combination phases is when things get a little bit tricky. For example, a full requires you to get high enough off the floor to straighten out your body, do a 360 twist, and land back onto your feet. Sounds easy, right? But when you watch the progression of an athlete learning the skill, it will show all the effort it takes. You will fall many times, and it will take hours of gym time to get a skill, but you have to learn how to control your body and be able to use your muscles to get around back to your feet. Just like other athletes, we must learn what muscles we should use in order to achieve what is required of us. Another part of cheer that shows that we are athletic is stunting. A common question at a regular gym is how much do you lift? And for cheerleaders, it's the same exact question, except we don't lift weights, we lift other humans. People's lives could be dependent on us. These people can be heavier than us, bigger than us, and taller than us, and we have to learn the proper skill and techniques so that we can get them up into the air. In this way, we are kind of similar to bodybuilders. We have to know how to use our legs properly and how to use our arms properly. With both tumbling and stunting, there are bound to be a lot of injuries. A statistic says a new report has revealed that 66% of catastrophic sport-related injuries among women in the U.S. are due to cheerleading. And that is not because we're doing something wrong or because we don't know what we're doing. It's simply because the sport is so intense. Another quote says, but cheerleading continues to cause more serious and deadly injuries by far than any other female sport. Both of these quotes were found in articles that explain that cheerleading is one of the most dangerous sports out there. These athletes put so much effort into their sport that doesn't get the recognition that they deserve. We train just like any other athlete, we compete just like any other athlete, and we have to learn the proper techniques and muscle memory and things like that just like any other athlete. I believe cheerleading is a sport and others should see it as a sport as well. The old stereotype of cheerleaders just being the popular mean girls that just stand on the sideline and cheer should be forgotten, and the new version of cheer should be recognized into the sport it is now.
Nick, a few thoughts.
Okay, just to start, time was the main thing I noticed that I had an issue with. I mean, you're under 5 minutes. It was kind of like, I could tell you had quite a bit of information, but I feel like you could have just spread it out more. Maybe you included a couple more examples of like professional cheerleading and this high school level and just different types of cheerleading. I think it would be beneficial for, well, maybe just for a lot of the guys probably. because I don't know anything about cheerleading. Maybe talk about the competitions that you guys do have and participate in, a little bit of informational as well. I thought your voice was projected correctly and well. Also, there was a lot of variation in it just because it seemed well rehearsed, which is good. But of course, the time was the main factor there. You did look at your notes quite a bit, which is understandable, but let's work a little bit more on eye contact for the most part. Other than that, I thought you had a good standpoint on who you were talking about, and I thought it was pretty clear what your topic was. So.
Right. I like the rhetorical question at the beginning. Is it attention device? It identifies the topic pretty clearly and gives us a point of view right away. I do think that you need a little bit more of a preview. I was listening to the speech and I wasn't quite sure whether or not you were laying out the preview or actually had begun making your arguments. So as it went on, I suddenly realized, well, that wasn't the preview. This is basically the argument at this particular point. The individual points are okay. I think you get to the basics on each of those things, but I think you're missing an opportunity to be really convincing by telling us a story or giving us some illustrations. There are a couple of things that I think work really well. When you, I thought it was a little bit humorous when you said, "Oh yeah, that's easy," doing the three-quarter flip, twist, backwards, somersault, or whatever it was you're describing. There's a little bit of humor there. You're being sarcastic about how that might be. But, making a comparison to some of the other things that people agree are athletics that other people do, I think you ought to emphasize the difficulty of those comparisons and talk about why that really is a physically involved activity. And go back to your definition at the beginning, which I do think you want to tell us where that definition comes from a little bit more. You want to tell us, why this is the best way to define something that's a sport per se. Your personal experience, I think, is one of the things that helps give a little bit of credibility, but the presentation there's a lot of reading. You need a lot more variation in your vocal performance, and I do think, for example, sometimes there are some emotional opportunities that are missed there. You got analogies throughout the presentation. You're doing a lot of comparative kind of thing, but you need to make those analogies sing a little bit more. And even though you've got good, if somebody's listening carefully and they get the images that you're talking about, they'll appreciate what you're talking about a little bit more. And I think you have to force them to see those things in their head, and that's why your language needs to be a little bit more evocative and your delivery needs to be more evocative. All right, thank you.